Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the In Biz LV podcast. I'm Mark Fierro with my co-host, Steve Schorr. How you like that? Thank you so much for joining us today. Our guest today is someone who has taken a completely different path to one of the most powerful positions in the state of Nevada. When you talk about politics, people talk about all kinds of traits: power, pool of funding, demographics. Segerblom is probably best known as one of us, a regular guy, someone you could talk to. Now he sits on the Clark County Commission, the most powerful political body in Southern Nevada, and no one laid a glove on him. The future looks bright. Segerblom, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I didn't know I was like one of the guys.
Commissioner.
Oh, you've always been one of the guys.
Yeah, you've
always been one of the guys.
The most approachable guy in Nevada politics. And what a great fit. You don't have, all you have to do is go be you in your district, and you got this for until you're termed out.
That's the goal. That's the goal. They're already threatening to recall me, but that's a different story.
Well, let them try. Let them try all they want. We'll take names and numbers, and then they'll get hit by the tick train.
Let me ask you a question that I don't know. I don't know if you can talk as honestly about it as you want to talk about it. You were first elected to the State Assembly in 2006. State Senate in 2012, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Now a member of the County Commission. You are a fourth generation Nevada lawmaker. Great-grandfather, part of it. Grandmother, lawmaker. You've been very, very much involved politically. Why now the County Commission? Why now the County Commission? You took some major stands at the state legislature on a number of issues. Everybody points to marijuana as being the issue, but you were a stalwart in a great number of issues. The county is a completely different animal. Why county politics at this point of your career?
Well, the primary reason is Chris June Kilgannon termed out, so there's a vacancy, and those don't happen very often. But it's also, I think, appropriate for me to come back down. In Carson City, we're kind of policymakers, but we don't ever meet the road. And truthfully, we pass a bill, but we never follow up to see whatever happened. So marijuana you can see, but most of these things we do, we never even know whether it worked or didn't work. So, I mean, now I'm at a place where I can actually see results, hopefully, and plus it's a paying job, and I can walk to work. So, any other reasons you want?
There now that recreational marijuana in the state of Nevada has a chance more to broadly play out, so we know more of the details of the way things work. Now there really is a measure with some of these other states. We're head and shoulders above anybody, aren't we, in terms of collecting and doing it right and no problems?
And the speed at which we did it. I mean, all these other states are still just trying. Massachusetts passed recreational at the same time we did. They're still trying. They have like 2 stores open. So no, we really are phenomenal. I'm meeting tomorrow with, it was supposed to be the mayor of Washington, D.C., but she had to run back, so it's her deputy. But he's dying to meet with me, not me personally, but just because they are so eager to just learn how we did it. Everybody in the country comes here and says, how did you do it so successfully? And truthfully, it's kind of random that we did it, but it works.
Okay, so let me throw a little bit of stones on these fires. Admittedly, we've been successful as to the rolling out first medical marijuana and then recreational. Admittedly, we were successful at that. But I don't know if everybody is ready to raise the flag and say what a great success it is. There are so many people that I know, people that talk about it, that are very, very unhappy about the way this whole tax issue has gone. And what they thought was going to benefit schools is not benefiting schools. And a lot of people are very unhappy in saying, we want an accountability of why it has taken place and why it's not going to what we thought it was going to go.
Well, if you want, I'll give you a simple version, which is when we passed the law, well, first off, the voters approved question 2, which said the money in question 2 goes to schools, and that money has gone to schools, no doubt about it. The governor came along and said, we're going to add a 10% excise tax, and that's going to go to schools. But the Republicans wouldn't pass that until the last day. So in anticipation of that being passed, we took $60 million out of the rainy day fund and put it in the school budget. And then the question, then the 10% excise tax passed, but that has been more than we anticipated, more than the 60 million. So there's probably another $50 million that went into the rainy day fund. And I don't know if you saw, the governor was bragging this week about how great the rainy day fund is. I mean, that's our money, but we know exactly where it is. The legislature could tomorrow, well, not tomorrow, but February the 5th, vote to take it out of the rainy day fund and give it to schools. So anyway, it's the long story short, it's not what we intended, but when you meet every 2 years, you do the best you can do, and then you go back and redo it. And that's what I think the legislature will do that this time.
Do you feel there's pressure going to be played upon the county commission to make sure that those funds come forward?
No, because that's not really our role. That's the legislature. But
You've got powerful lawmakers up in Carson City.
Right, but everybody agrees. The teachers are livid. The parents are livid. Probably some of the students are livid too. But everyone agrees the money is supposed to go to schools. But it also needs to go on top of what they call the DSA. It can't just be thrown into that pot of money, because that's like $1 billion and it just disappears, because it's really only about $50 million a year.
The devil is always in the details, and the rainy day fund is code word for ain't going to happen a lot of times. And it was at the 11th hour, 11:59, and you were going to get one or you were going to get nothing, basically, correct?
Right. But the reality is, it is raising a ton of money, much more than we
Yes.
anticipated, and that money is sitting there in the rainy day fund, and it can also be designated now in the legislature. So we have both houses. We have the governor. Sisolak's well aware of this thing. So I'd be shocked if they don't do the right thing.
Anybody that wants to discuss the legitimacy of whether or not Nevada made the right decision in recreational, I urge that they watch Murder Mountain. And it's about what's going on in Humboldt County that continues to this day, and that is more people disappear off the face of the planet because of illegal weed growers. And at the same time, California is struggling to open a very small number of dispensaries. They haven't come anywhere close to the success that we have on a per capita basis. What is it now? It looks there is a little bit of a question as to how the last set of licenses were awarded. And that is, some people say that it was basically done by out-of-state part-time workers. Where is that going to come out, do you think?
I think when people actually get in and look at the details, it was done the same way the first round was, which is they had a scoring system. They have each application is scored by like 5 different people. They added those scores, divided by 5, and they put it in a line. And truthfully, it's the best to happen. I mean, some guys, got 2 in the county. In fact, a couple guys got, I think, 2 in the county, which is crazy. They only got 10 total. But that's how the scoring system worked. And so we need to go back and revisit the scoring system. But you can't say that there was any hanky-panky going on. The problem is the state says we can't tell you what happened. And that's wrong. I mean, you can't give out licenses and then say, by the way, we're not going to tell you how we did it.
The other issue is that in the application process, it clearly stated in the application process that no one would get more than a single location in a single jurisdiction, but that didn't hold true. I mean, some got as many as 8 different licenses, so that meant they got multiple locations in multiple jurisdictions.
True, but some of that is like in Lincoln County, and some of these counties each got 1 license, and so the licenses they got are never going to be used because those counties don't want them.
They're dead set against.
But there are a couple places that got 2 in. I mean, they used their dispensary in Henderson to apply for 1. They used their dispensary in Las Vegas to apply for 1. So technically, no one had got more than 1. But it's still pretty crazy that some of these places got 2. But again, that's the way the law was written, and that's the way they implemented it. But there's been no scandals in the administration of this law.
You and I were at a public meeting along with the now governor, where he talked about that it was his hope that the new licenses would create even greater vertical integration of what was going on. And I thought that was a very interesting discussion on the part of the governor now. And now looking back at it, there are some that received licenses that weren't even and hadn't even been licensed before. And that was a shock to a lot of people when that was not expected to happen that way.
Yeah, but again, I mean, the application says here's the factors you focus on. People spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on their application, and they scored them, and that's how it came out. But the good news is you don't want to give all the ones to the people who already have them, and some of the new people got some. Some people that just had grows got dispensaries. So we are trying to diversify, and there's more minorities and women involved. But
There's been a lot of discussion about a potential class action suit against that. What do you
And there
think
is
that would do?
Well, there is a big lawsuit pending, that one of the dispensaries that I think many other ones have joined in, so we'll have to see where that goes. But to my knowledge, end of the day, if we can get the sunlight in there and see how the scoring took place and look at these applications, see how people were ranked, it'll be like it was back in 2000, was it 2015 or 14 when they first did it, and everybody was complaining about that. At the end of the day, it seemed to work, so.
Years ago in Nevada, we had a standing law. There was no way that we were going to allow corporations to run gaming because you couldn't check up on who the shareholders were. And for all we knew, Chicago Mob was buying up shares. And so that was our rule for keeping corporations out. Now we freely allowed corporations into the marijuana trade. Does that cause you any heartburn?
No, because I think anybody that owns 10% or more has to be submitted their background just like anybody else. So the reality is there's hundreds of millions of dollars involved, and it's tough to get private interest, to come up with that money. So you have to go public. A lot of these are Canadian corporations that are publicly traded, again, but they're scrutinized by, and all the same laws that apply to corporations that run hotels apply to marijuana. So it's just the way the industry's going. It's just we are at the vanguard of that, but nothing wrong with that. I mean, I actually had introduced or had asked for a bill to be drafted that never happened because I left, but would create a stock exchange for marijuana here in Las Vegas. I thought it'd be a great idea because what a perfect place for Las Vegas to host that. But anyway, if you're a national player, an international player, you have to have a presence in Nevada. So all these major corporations all are fighting to come in here, and guys, the Greenspun, their group, they sold out for $300 million. So that they're not
This is
doing
really
too
worth
bad.
something. Pretty soon you're talking about real money, right?
Exactly.
The governor has said that he will look at the potential of creating a marijuana board similar to a gaming control board, believing that is the best way to adjudicate all of this in the future. Where do you stand on that? Do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea?
Absolutely fantastic idea. Yeah, I mean, when I wrote my first bill, I actually had marijuana under the Gaming Control Commission and board because they do the same thing. It's all cash, monitor the background, do all that stuff, and they threw a fit. Oh my God, we can't be involved with marijuana. But the truth is, I'll bet we establish one maybe this session, and then probably 2 to 4 years they combine the two, because the same interest, the same background, all that stuff. So it fits. It's a perfect fit.
I would imagine it's the fear of the feds seeing the two on the same page that causes
Right
the
now,
heartburn.
but as soon as it's legalized federally, then why not? I mean, again, they deal in the same business, and then you're going to see all these companies that are now off the strip pulled into the hotels. So right next to the nightclub, there's going to be a dispensary, and there's going to be whatever.
How soon do you see the county moving towards lounges?
That's my number one priority, and I'm going to introduce or ask. I guess I can't introduce a bill. I have to ask my fellow commissioners if I'm allowed to ask for a bill draft. But I'm going to do that within the next minute or two. And I'm hopeful that they agree, then we'll just be going forward. And probably won't be till the end of the year until we actually get something open. But, if you've been to Planet 13, I mean, they are so ready to go. They've got a huge, like an aircraft hangar in the back ready to do stuff. Everybody's ready for it. And you can't truthfully advertise, come to Las Vegas and buy marijuana, but, you can't use it anywhere.
And in the city the city of Las Vegas, they're also looking at this idea of a lounge, but they want a huge separation between the lounges and the providers, which are the dispensaries. They don't want the two connected. Do you see that as being problematic?
Well, actually, under question 2, you can't have them actually physically connected. You can walk out the door and walk in, but the question 2 says you can't use marijuana anywhere you sell it. So,
Right.
so I think the city's okay on that. But I do think we don't want to just tie it to dispensaries. We want to allow capitalism, and if somebody comes up with a good idea, why not have it separate? The key is you don't want somebody to go in there and come out and get in the car. Everybody's terrified of that. You want to make sure they check to see they're 21, and you want to make sure whatever they're using is something from our Nevada system.
Yes.
So that's the beauty of having it next to the dispensary. You can have the people in the dispensary buy it, walk next door, show that the package hasn't been opened, go inside. And that's, when we went to San Francisco, that's what they did. They made sure that it was locally bought stuff. But we could also have a delivery system. So you could have a little separate lounge over here, and then the dispensary ships it and delivers it to somebody inside there.
That's the question, is how that second entity, how the lounge makes money if they're not selling.
Right.
What kind of models have come to mind for how they can make money to sustain? Because there's millions and millions of dollars of product moving through them, but yet under this model they wouldn't.
Well,
be able
that's why you
sell
have
it.
to have food, ideally it's alcohol, but you could have yoga, you could have jazz or rock. I mean, you could have other things there, but the real moneymaker is going to be food and alcohol. And that's why when you leave, you need to make sure that people don't just walk out and get in a car, even though that's what people do in bars every day of the week.
And marijuana is not seen as smoking, quote unquote, so you can have marijuana within a restaurant situation where you couldn't have smoking within a restaurant situation. So that makes a differential.
Yeah, but also, our clean air, we are unique in the country as far as our Clean Air Act only mentions tobacco. It doesn't mention marijuana.
Right.
So you can smoke marijuana. And the other thing is we do allow, in limited circumstances, food and cigarettes. So that same rule could apply.
Right. So can I change? Do you have another question?
I have one question that's right on point, and then we can wrap it up, because this is probably
I
the
want to change.
penultimate.
I want to move to a further.
He did other things?
Yeah, I do.
I was unaware of that.
I'm called the weed man for.
Yeah, for a reason. As you know, one of the people that has been caught in the scissors of all this is a veteran, served the country, ended up with a several-year prison sentence hanging over his head. Fortunately, we had a judge that saw a reason. But right now in Nevada, if you smoke marijuana and a couple of days, as much as a couple of days later, you drive a car, under this archaic per se law that says if you have, 4 nanograms, 2 nanograms, whatever, we're talking parts per billion, folks.
I think it's 0.5.
Yeah, per billion, that you're guilty under this law. And if that blood draw comes about as a result of an accident, as it did in Mr. Cranach's case, you're guilty of everything. They just throw the whole book at you. Is there going to be any effort, particularly from the father of marijuana in Nevada, any effort at the legislature to at least take this up as a public policy? This is insane.
I think so, but again, I'm not there anymore. I did ask for a bill draft to allow that, what they call rebuttable presumption, so they can test you, but you also can show, look, at the cops said, like Mr. Cranach, where the cops said, oh, he wasn't under the influence. So he was charged for something that was just absolutely crazy. So hopefully somebody will pick that up, but I honestly don't have a sponsor right now.
Do you intend to visit the legislature on that issue?
Absolutely, every day,
Thank you.
Okay,
by computer.
let me change gears for a little bit.
Okay.
Besides marijuana, probably the single largest issue that is now being discussed in Southern Nevada is the advent of the incoming Las Vegas Raiders in 2020, the building of the stadium and all of those issues that come along with it. We've already seen and reaped some of the benefits of the Raiders coming here. We've seen housing prices increase. We've seen a lot of new businesses looking to move into Las Vegas. But there's so many questions still out there regarding the stadium, regarding the infrastructure that is needed to feed that stadium, not only during the time of the Raiders being at the stadium and their games, which is only probably 9 a year, I believe the number is, but it's all the other things that will take place, the huge, massive concerts, all of the events that will take place. The question is, where is the county going to ensure, and how is the county going to ensure that the infrastructure is going to be there in time to support what the stadium is going to mean to this community?
That is a $64,000 question, and I understand that they had planned to divert road money there to at least build the interchange there at Tropicana, and then they realized they couldn't get it open by 2020
Right.
and backed off. So that is a question that we're just going to have to wait and see. But we all have to make sure that it happens. But we also can't, like my district doesn't have the stadium. I've got huge issues on Sunrise Mountain and the east part of the valley where those people can't get to work. So I don't want my money for those people to try to get build their roads diverted to Tropicana. No. So I don't know. Maybe we have to do some more money, special money just for that. But it is. You're right. It's going to be a nightmare. I mean, the people that stay at the Luxor and the stay at the MGM and those places, they can walk there. But otherwise, for locals, it's going to be a disaster.
It's not only that; it's the infrastructure needed just to support the massive amount of parking that's going to be needed, and the shuttles that will be able to be required to take people just from parking to the stadium.
Yeah, and then of course Sunday afternoon, there's no traffic on I-15 going back to California.
No.
So we're going to have a Sunday afternoon game. You get 60,000 people come out of there, join the 200,000 that are already on the road. I mean, we are probably looking at a true nightmare. But
it is a nightmare, and a lot of the times it's going to end up in the county's lap, in the commissioner's lap, to figure out how to make this right. Now you have a whole new board of county commissioners. I mean, it's probably the first time in a great number of years that I can remember there are so many new people elected as the board of county commissioners.
And in 2 more years, it's going to be a whole new board. So
a whole new board.
Yeah.
And that's going to become right in the same time as all of this is going to come before you as county commissioner. Where do you think the county commission is going to stand?
Well, we have, at the end of the day, we support the hotels. And the hotels cannot afford to have things tied up because of that stadium. So whatever it takes, we'll do it. It's just a question of who pays for it. Maybe we need some more room tax, maybe, who knows? But my personal feeling would be we shouldn't have all the taxpayers with a sales tax, stuff like that, pay for that little infrastructure for that stadium, even though we all, as you point out, we're all going to benefit. I voted against it initially, but it's there now, so let's just take advantage of it. But it is going to be, it's something we just have to deal with. But that's what we do in Vegas. We just suck it up, and whatever it takes, we do it. So I can't tell you how we're going to do it, but I know we're going to do it.
From 40,000 feet, it looks impossible. It looks absolutely impossible, and it looks like the center across the street, Timo, if anything ever happens at the same time, we'll just shut down the whole city and everybody call it a day. And like you say, everybody leaving Las Vegas on a Sunday would just have to come up with some other plan.
Spend another 4 hours on the highway. It's the only way you're going to do it.
Well, I'm sure the casinos will be happy to say, come on in, and we'll be happy to let you gamble for another 4 hours while the streets clear out. So
Mm-hmm.
what are the chances of that? The casinos will go right along with that. That would be the best thing that ever happened to them. See, we already came up with that.
And listen to this. So yesterday I met with, they're reviving the high-speed train.
Yes.
It's going to go right down the middle of I-15 and cross right in front of the Raider Stadium, elevated. So the beautiful view you have now is going to be an elevated train coming down, and it's going to go down to right there at the corner of Flamingo and I-15. That's where they're going to build a new station. So if that thing happens, watch out. I mean, then talk about congestion. Then we really got congestion.
All other world. Well, one of the and you bring up transportation. One of the things that Governor, former chairman of the county commission, was very, very strong on is he wanted to build those elevated streets coming out of McCarran instead of doing any light rail or anything like that. I always thought that light rail was the only answer that would include the center of Las Vegas, which is part of your work. What are you stuck on elevated?
I'm absolutely opposed. I don't know. I'm just one vote, but I just think that is the world's worst idea. I mean, part of what I want to do is even though the Strip is important and that's our lifeblood, we need to get away from being a one-horse town.
Strip.
And we have the UNLV that just got awarded this huge thing where now they're a research university.
Mm-hmm.
That's to build something that blocks off that, just to me is crazy. We're trying to elevate this town in other ways other than just hotels, and then we're going to build this thing that just. So anyway, hopefully we can kill that. I heard now they're talking about digging under as opposed to going up, which might alleviate that problem.
Brian Greenspun keeps pounding away that what happens in these cities that have built these elevated roadways, they're in the business of tearing them down because that's where homeless people congregate. That's where all of the property values directly adjacent to them fall. But if you look at the alternative, if you look at light rail going all the way to downtown Las Vegas, look what it does to even Maryland Parkway. All of a sudden, those values gives access to Sunrise Hospital, gives access to UNLV for people that wouldn't otherwise be able to ever get to that part of Maryland Parkway.
Or just have a really nice electric bus system that goes down there. I mean, there's lots of things we can do, but you're right. We don't want to spend our time focus on transportation to the detriment of the people that live there and spent the years trying to get to this point where now they're finally a place to go to, and then you're going to bury them under this elevated road. So
At the same time, I don't know if we have put in enough effort to really look at the monorail and what the monorail
that's
can
the thing
do.
I was going to point. I want to see RTC take over the monorails. I mean, the private enterprise cannot do what we need to do.
Exactly.
But let's build it out with public money, put it to the airport.
Put it to the airport. Put it
That's
right.
the beginning of all of the answers right
It's it.
there. That and Uber, these other, they're all alternatives.
Yeah,
You're
and actually, if
absolutely
you look
right.
around the world, the monorails are kind of coming back. So it's a fitting thing to try at least.
Yeah, the current model doesn't work, but everybody in Las Vegas that has looked at the monorail, you just get the feeling in your heart of hearts, if they just change this and change this, connected it to the airport, we'd have a winner on our hands, and it would change go from a dead weight that we've been carrying around to being something that could
And
be really
extend it to
important.
where it can meet where the people are.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. You have to extend it to the place where people are and people need it.
Yeah, and I proposed going down, taking it north to the stratosphere at least, and then coming back up the strip to where the convention center is, and then going back over.
Especially with the expansion of the convention center.
Yeah, and then we have the new Resort World going in, and
Right.
and the Drew, the old thing, so and the old Sahara's coming back. I mean, my end of the strip, which is where I have, is really the hot new place.
Blooming.
There's so much potential there. We have so much potential on the table, so many jobs, the potential for so many jobs, quality jobs that'll be there forever. Once this is established, I mean, if you look at the big picture of the United States, and I worked on the maglev train, but you look at the potential of the United States. Years ago, the Transcontinental Railroad, if you look at where all of the great cultural art centers are, they're out in the middle of the prairie, but it's because there was a railroad there. That was the crossroads. There was water. There were all these other things. Well, that's what will happen if we have light rail. That's what will happen if monorail gets its legs under it and we get behind it. I think one of the things that was short-sighted about the use of the elevated roads was they compared that cost to what happened with the monorail cost, which monorail is far more expensive, granted. But look what monorail does for the local economy once it's established. An elevated road doesn't do anything for the local economy.
And at the same time, the elevated road does not do what the monorail would do as far as ease of use
Yep.
and the potential of gaining the ridership that it needs to have.
Well, for years it was the cab companies, wasn't it, that
Right.
blocked connecting
And
to
that's the point.
that
Is when
McCarran
Uber came
Airport.
along, they proved the CAD companies are, they don't have any clothes.
It was a phantom, yeah.
So, because they would go up to Carson City, hire every lobbyist, and anytime you try to do anything, they would wipe it off the map. But Uber came in there and just like, hello, the next thing you know, cab companies are starving. So,
Think about this for a second. This will put this in perspective for anybody that hasn't really looked at this closely. If you look at the power politics, just the bumping up against each other, who can take on who, the natural place that the monorail would land if it went from the airport, first place it goes is MGM. So the cab companies literally beat the MGM for all of these years. Everybody that complained about the monorail, what they were really complaining about, it didn't go anywhere that anybody wanted to go. It just needed one more line, and that was to McCarran Airport.
yeah, and Steve Wynn, stopped it from going down the strip.
Exactly.
Yeah, he wanted nothing
He
to do
wanted
with it.
nothing to do with it.
But now, the Venetian is begging to put a stop there because they're going to have that sphere out in the behind there.
Madison
now
Square Garden.
Yeah, which is going to be a huge thing. So.
No matter what point you came to Las Vegas, no matter how long you've been here, if you got here 2 years ago, you're never going to believe what the city's going to look like 1 year or 2 years from now.
Tick was born in Boulder City, born there. You look at what has happened in truly a short period of time. From the time that you were born until today is really not that long a period of time in the history of communities. And what has happened to Las Vegas in that period of time is truly an amazing story.
Yeah, well, I remember when Sahara was San Francisco, and that was the desert. And just when you think of where it's gone now, it's just, anyway, it is incomprehensible. And that's the other thing I think we need to do is focus on the next 50 years.
Exactly.
And the amount
Today.
of water and the
Today.
and the amount of water we have, which is our limiting factor, and maybe focus on trying to push infrastructure back in, and then maybe try to raise the quality of life as opposed to build everything we can build, every second of the day.
One of the things about when I say he's one of us, when you start adding up the things that Tick's in favor of, if you look at green energy, you look at, oh, well, that's nice. There are solar panels and everything. But look at the water savings. We did the math on if you had 10% growth, it ends up being hundreds of billions of gallons of water saved because we use water to make electricity using coal. That's the stupidest approach in the world. We have to do something about our water usage. And I think green energy is one of the first things. Is there something to be done at the county level to jumpstart that again the way it was a few years ago?
I honestly don't know if that's something we can do, but if we can, we should do it. And we should at least ask the question, those kind of questions. And that's what I want to start now, is asking, what can we do on all these things, transportation, energy, air, water, now, that in 20 years we'll look back and say, thank God we did it.
When you look today, as you sit on that county commission, your first meeting is coming up here, and when you look at the county commission and this community, what do you see, number one, as being the one problem we're going to face? And number two, what do you think is the number one thing that the community needs to do in order to be where we want to be in the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, you have to say it because we don't have much control over it, but the reality is education, public schools is the number one problem we have, because that's what prevents the major corporations from moving to Nevada. So that limits us to basically gaming and a few other places. But if we could raise the quality of schools, it's not that hard, but we just need to have suck it up and pay teachers a little bit more and reduce class size and focus on the schools in the really tough neighborhoods. Because you go to the great neighborhoods, we have great public schools. It's just, the poor schools, you get the first year teachers, the people that are transient all the time, and that brings all our scores down. But once we do that, then water is the next issue, and transportation. But we can do this. It's just, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. We just need to focus on quality of life as opposed to everybody getting as much as they can get and moving on.
And we've got to stop cutting what our current schools have. I mean, my school alone had our budget cut by $250,000. How do you do that? We lost teachers. We lost teaching assistants. We lost special people that are helping children. How do you continue to do that and then say at the same time, we've got to do things better for our kids?
Exactly. I mean, we are so short-sighted. It's just unbelievable. But again, it takes the willpower. Hopefully, the governor with this new legislature will have the willpower to do something. But I ran on proposing a 1 cent sales tax for schools, $400 million a year. So I feel like I got a mandate for to raise taxes. So I talk about it every time I can. You get what you pay for, and with schools particularly, you cannot live hand to mouth and expect to produce. As you said, I mean, when we cut back what the minimum we're on already, I mean, it's so devastating to everybody. They give up hope.
They do. They give up hope, and we cannot take that away from our children or our families. We can't do that.
Yeah.
It is what Las Vegas will look like as a result if we don't make bold action. Years ago, I did an IPO for Bill Rouse. It was Liberty Property Trust. I did an IPO and I did a secondary. All in, it was right at about $1 billion. And I had a chance to speak with Bill. He had an uncle that was responsible for the Rouse companies out here that became Howard Hughes, bought out Howard Hughes. And he was fascinated by Las Vegas. And I had a chance, we spent quite a bit of time together. I said, Bill, why don't you come to Las Vegas? And he said, well, as you know, I build these massive regional centers. You build a center, and that would become the head of all of California, Arizona, Nevada, a couple other states maybe. But what do we know about those centers is this is their top tier of people. This is the very best education. These are Harvard people. These are Yale people. They want the education that their kids had. So tell me about your educational system in Las Vegas. And I go, and he goes, strike one, strike two, strike three. I build a regional center here for companies like Aetna, Campbell Soup, Allstate, these massive, massive companies. He goes, I can build those centers and they will stand empty because of your school system.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, it's we have great schools and everybody's working as hard as they can, but you have poor schools in poor neighborhoods that don't have the resources, and they put the first year teachers there so they don't have the teachers. And then you say, well, why are our scores low? I mean, but anyway, but let me just point out one other thing, and that is coming to the county commission, I have an office, a gorgeous office. I got 2 beautiful windows, look out on the west side of the valley of Mount Charleston, but you walk out my door, my secretary sits out in an open area. It's like who has a secretary that sits in an open area with everybody else? My assistant has to have an office, 10 miles away. I get 1.5 assistants for this number 1 job in the state, right? The TV in my office is a 13-inch tube.
We'll get your TV set.
I already bought a 75-inch flat screen.
Now you're talking.
But I'm saying the whole thing is just like needs to be revised.
Priorities.
And one of the things I want to try to do is to actually just let's just study how we operate as a county commission, because I don't think anyone's thought of that for 30 years. It's been since that building was built. That's the way we've done it, everything. And in some ways it worked fine, and we've had tough times the last 10 years. But going forward, let's see, maybe we can figure out a better way to have the government work and make sure that elected officials have the ability to and the staff to really do things.
People still look at 2007 and 2008 as being the single toughest time that Las Vegas has ever had to go through. There are a number of people who say we face that same danger in the very near future. Do you worry about that?
I do, but I think we're going to be okay. I think, we have a housing bubble a little bit, but I don't think it's anywhere close to what it was. It was crazy. And that's what really happened, when that fell out from under us, and then our tax structure, because we built our tax structure on building houses, and when that stopped, then everybody just collapsed. But we have been through 10 tough years, and thank God the county sucked it in and tightened its belt and survived. But now that we've survived, we're still in that survival mode, and I'm saying, that those days are past. Let's start to move forward and really look again at how we do things, and if there's a better way to do it, that's fine. So I want to go to LA, see how their county commission works. Travel around the country, just look for different models and see. Why not?
And that question is: are we being strategic enough? Are we being strategic enough as a community, or are we just doing the things the way we've always done them?
Exactly, and I think that's truthfully what it is. But let's check out and see if anybody else is available. Homeless is a classic example. I remember for years we had a homeless population downtown, but now and going out, it's everywhere.
Everywhere.
And you can't blame the homeless, right? But we've got to figure out a way that we can address that issue head on. We have enough resources to do that, and so we just actually passed a thing. My first meeting on Monday. Mayor Kirkpatrick, to her credit, said, let's take the marijuana money the county makes and put it into homeless. So we're looking at maybe $10 million just off $10 million, I guess, would be just off the top right away. But then with $1 million a month, we could assign to homeless to try to at least address the issue.
And there are other cities around the country that are dealing with homeless, I believe, better than we are.
It couldn't do any worse. But then there's a ton of people trying to do stuff. It's just I don't think there's any coordination of what's happening. But again, these are difficult problems, but let's deal with them.
Now, I do know this, that a couple of big cities have said zero, they were shooting for zero homelessness, and they're doing it. There is a way to do it. I think what we've heard is we're kind of drowning in our own generosity, our willingness to hand out dollar bills, to hand out $5 bills. A lot of that's going to drugs, a lot more than we like to think. A lot more than we like to think. Well, with that, this is that magic time where we say it's time to call it a day. Thank you so much for showing up today.
Thank you.
Commissioner. County Commissioner Dick Segerblom. I'm Mark Fierro, Fierro Communications, the friendliest marketing firm in Las Vegas. Steve Schorr, he sits on all these important boards, an important guy around business.
Yes,
Remember
cool.
to like us here, like us on Facebook, like us on Stitcher. For all of you entrepreneurs out there, if you have a story, hit us up at 702-385-7300. Share, follow, like. We're out of here.